Get your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.
You will often want to perform some type of function on the records selected within a select statement. For example, you may want to count the number of records selected. Likewise, you may want to count sets of records within a result set. For example, you may want to count the number of records within a table by state or by country. You use aggregate functions to perform these tasks in SQL. A function is simply a type of mathematical or computational operation, such as count, sum, or average, for example. The term aggregate means a whole or total, composed of separate parts. The term aggregate function is used to describe the way that the function will perform its computation over a range or group of records. The grouping of records upon which the function is performed could be all of the records selected, or they could be groupings that are created by the unique values found within one or more fields. While you may sometimes want to perform an aggregate function, such as count, on all of the records within a select statement to find the total count of the records, in real-life applications of SQL, you will most often use the aggregate functions in conjunction with the group by clause. In this lesson, you will examine using the group by clause in the select statement to group records by values within a field and perform aggregate functions on those grouped values. For example, grouping the distinct values found within a state field and then finding the sum of a sales field for each grouping created by the unique values found within the state field to find the total amount of sales by state. The core SQL of the select statement with the group by clause is shown below. Note that the table name parameter is the name of the table from which you want to select the records. The field name parameter is the name of a field. Aggregate function is an aggregate function you want to perform upon the specified field, and criteria is a criteria expression used for selection. Elements shown within brackets are optional. Elements shown within braces are simply optional extensions of the select clause that can be incorporated if needed into a single select statement. These are only shown so that you will be aware of the order in which the clauses should be placed within a single select statement. So the core SQL of the select statement with a group by clause is select field name, aggregate function field name, etc., from table name, optionally where clause, group by field name, etc., optionally having criteria, optionally order by field name. In many relational database systems, the fields named within the group by clause must also appear within the select clause, meaning that you can only choose to group by a field that has been selected within the table. Also note that some RDBMS implementations may also allow for the use of field labels, field numbers, meaning the order of the field from left to right, and more complex expressions within the group by clause. Note that when using the group by clause, you may also choose to use the optional having clause within the select statement. The having clause is simply a selection criteria that determines which groups to display. It functions like a where clause for the group by clause. However, the criteria used in the having clause can include aggregate functions that the where clause will not allow. Consider the following example that shows the sum of a sales field for groupings within a state field. Select state and the sum of sales from a table, group by state, having a sum of sales greater than 100,000. In this example, the having clause would restrict the display of any groups where the total of the sales field for the state grouping was less than 100,000. Note that this is not a selection that could be accomplished using the where clause. When creating a select statement that includes both a where clause and a having clause, remember that the where clause is used to select which records are used to create the aggregated groups, while the having clause is used to select which groups to display after the selected records have been aggregated. Let's take a minute to look at the group by clause and the having clause in Access 2013. Here we have an order details table which shows the order ID, the quantity of the product ordered, and the unit price. So let's look at a simple group by example where we have select the order ID field and the sum of the quantity field from order details, where status ID equals 2, which then selects only those records where 2 is in the status ID, then group by order ID. So if we view those records then, we can see the total quantity of products ordered for each order ID. If we look at the group by having example, this is the exact same query, but with the having clause attached. So now we want to see these same orders and the same sum of quantity per order, but only show the groups that have a sum of quantity that is greater than 100. So if we view the results of this, we can see there are far fewer orders that have over 100 items in the order. So note that having just restricts the groups that are shown versus the where clause, which actually chooses which records to use to create the groups. Now, the following hyperlinks display the use of the group by clause within the select statement for SQL Server 2012 and Access 2010 and 2007, which also still applies to Access 2013. Additional functions and modifiers that can be used with the group by clause within MySQL 5.7 are also listed at the following hyperlink as an additional learning resource. The following web page hyperlinks list aggregate functions used with the group by and having clauses that are accepted within MySQL 5.7, SQL Server 2012, and Access 2013.
Like what you see? Pick up your free copy of the complete tutorial at www.teachucomp.com/free.